I don't know where the summer went, but it's football season, essentially. It's still July, but football camps are starting up all over Louisiana college campuses and campuses all over the country. And we are on July 30th, just a month away to the day from that LSU season opener against Clemson. Still a long way to get there. A lot of recruiting notes and news to watch between now and then, including some fresh updates that Sam and I will get to here shortly in the lead up to this 2025 season. This is Louisiana versus All Y'all's Recruit That Boot. I'm Jet Roser. He's Sam Spiegelman. And how are we doing today, man? I don't know where the hell the summer goes. It's just shorter and shorter every year.
What summer? I got 2 weeks, I think, in July. I slept maybe one of those nights. We were talking off air about quality of sleep, and I think I got one good night of sleep during this slow period, and now yes, if your college isn't already back at camp or starting this week, then your high school team is probably back at strength and conditioning or immersed in workouts, fall camp dates. Football is in the air. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm stoked. I need something. Waiting for your first baby is like, I have always prided myself on being a patient person, which may or may not be true depending on who you talk to. But waiting for a baby to be born is like plucking your eyeballs out. It's maddening. So, to me, I'm ready for football season. I need that in my life right now.
I feel like I've simultaneously been excited and ready and waiting for this 2025 season. I mean, since early this calendar year. And then now that it is here, essentially, I'm just really not ready for it. I could use another month of summer, essentially. I don't know whether I'm more frustrated with not having gotten as much work stuff done this summer as I was hoping and not gotten around to some of the schools I was hoping to see. And I mean, I had a pretty active summer, but I just, when it comes to catching all of the high schools around the state, I feel like my eyes get a little bit too big for my belly, which is, I mean, I got a big belly at this point in life, but I want to see all of the high schools all the time. And so I'm frustrated that I haven't gotten a chance to get out to some. And now it's fall camp season. And then, there's also the piece of wish I could have gotten a little bit more of a break, had those 4 days down in New Orleans, hit way more antique malls than I would have liked if I was at the steering wheel of more of that trip, but came away with this nice Sylvester the Cat cup. So we're drinking some iced tea out of a new glass here.
Classy.
It reminded me of a glass of a Sylvester glass that we had at one of my mama's houses when I was younger. And so I said, all right, well, now I'm on board for this antique road show we've got going up and down magazine.
Shout out to all the mamas out there, especially my mama.
No doubt. So let's get into it, man. It is, as I said, July 30th. The commitment dates to watch for LSU fans are going to start firing off here pretty fast and furious again as August hits. You reported this morning, I believe, Darryus McKinley, the defensive lineman from Acadiana, who I think since spring when he told me he was looking at a November 8th birthday celebration commitment date, we all kind of wondered were the college is going to let it slide that deep in the football season, as many of these colleges want to get these things figured out, want to get their class sorted out before the season, as they now do, as many of the high schools want their top players to figure out their decisions before the season. Darry's telling you that he's going to make his move on August 1st. For LSU fans, also keep an eye on Samada's Deuce Gerald's August 2nd, Jason Matthews August 8th, Darius Gray now, who we'll talk about in a second, August 22nd, moving his commitment date up before the season, surprising a lot of folks over the weekend. But let's kind of go one by one and just start focusing on Darryus. The move up to saying, hey, Sam, I'm going to commit in 2 out of LSU, Tennessee, Texas, and Florida. Talk to me about just kind of your feel on where the younger brother of LSU sophomore Dominic McKinley is at this point. It seems like the Tigers have been well positioned with him for quite a while.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head when Darryus had told you November 8th. He had confirmed it to me, and I think we looked at each other from a distance and just said, "There's no way that." Dom also, I think, had different timelines for his decision. I love the McKinley family timeline that they can do things on
Facts.
their timeline. But nonetheless, Darryus is going to lock this thing in. Like we said, schools around the country and in Louisiana are getting back to camp. That includes Acadiana, which has high aspirations this season because of Darryus, who had a break loose season last year for those Wrecking Rams. He's going to lock in his decision on Friday. I would be absolutely shocked if he did not say LSU. Darryus got his offer during Dominic's recruitment. So it's always been it's been fun for him to go to the Swamp and to go to Rocky Top and to go to the 40 acres and get his own recruitment and go through navigate his own process. But those relationships are just so long standing at this point. His family is obviously well plugged in with that LSU staff. He knows every member of that LSU staff by this point. Those relationships are just too much to overcome, in my opinion. I would be shocked if he doesn't say the Tigers on Friday when he announces.
The family, you mentioned loving their timelines. They've been so much fun to be around when we get a chance to be around them these last few years. And it's just, close-knit relationships all around, including the brothers there. And Darryus has spent a ton of time on LSU's campus, both for his own recruiting reasons and because Dom is over there really setting himself up to build off of, some flashes we saw as a freshman, despite dealing with some turf toe issues, to now an expectation. Brian Kelly said on day one of camp that he's going to be a huge piece of what this LSU defense tries to do in Dom's sophomore season. So, the proximity there for the entire family, the relationships there, family-wise and comfort level with the LSU relationships and all those things certainly stand out. And you're right. The junior season for Darryus was such a huge leap forward for him. He had been impressing us from the time he was a freshman over there with the Wrecking Rams, when he was, a little bit leaner and wiry of a defensive end for Acadiana when he was starting out his career. He's bulked up a ton. I think about 50 pounds the last time I had checked on kind of the strides he had made, bulking up physically. This fall, he, had 18 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, another 11 quarterback hurries, and you could see was just that much more of a disruptive and versatile, potentially inside-outside guy on that defensive front as Dom headed off to Baton Rouge. And so looking forward to watching him now this senior season build on that. Seeing him this spring, those guys are not men of many words all the time, but Darryus, he's gotten a lot more vocal, a lot more loud, a lot more comfortable in his skin as a leader on that defense as he's gotten older. And so he was kind of barking at some of his teammates on the first day of spring when I saw those guys, and looking forward to just that confidence level spilling over onto the field this fall as a playmaker on the defensive front and as a leader for those Wrecking Rams for sure. Would be a really nice addition for this LSU class if they can get them as we expect them to.
Yeah, you're looking at a potential defensive line haul again of Big Rich Anderson as an interior guy. Guys like Lamar Brown and Darryus who can line up off the edge. They can line up over the tackle. They can line up inside and create mismatches with their quickness and their power. And then guys like D'Anthony Lafayette over there, who's a bulldozer off the edge or from that linebacker position, but can rush from a various different spots. And they're in the mix with another one of those hybrid pass rushers that I know we're about to talk to as well.
August 2nd, we're looking forward to a commitment announcement from Deuce Gerald's out there in the Atlanta area, but family ties here in Baton Rouge. Dad played at Scotlandville and then went on to Ole Miss, where Frank Wilson and company were holding down the fort in Oxford years ago. LSU has remained in the thick of things with Deuce in a notable national recruiting process. He's got guys like the aforementioned Lamar Brown and company saying, come be a part of this thing with me and Big Rich and company. And how good can this defensive line haul be if you can bring a guy with those strong Louisiana ties back here to Baton Rouge for the college level. I know the competition for that commitment announcement on Saturday and ultimately, signing later on this year, pretty stout though. What's your read on Deuce, a guy that you've certainly had a chance to talk to, more than I have, an out-of-state guy there, but someone that folks all over the country are watching as closely as Lamar and company are here?
Yeah, this recruitment has gone in a lot of different directions, and definitely has gotten a little bit more interesting as August 2nd, this Saturday, approaches. Sorry when I say that out loud. It's more for me to understand, as opposed to the listener. But Ohio State was kind of the team buzzing at the top for Deuce as an underclassman. But after official visits, you could say that LSU and Oregon really started to separate from the pack. Michigan as another team that was trending up and has since sort of faded out. Oregon is what I put a prediction in about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had heard that as the family thought about it, Oregon had the best NIL offer. They have multiple defensive line coaches devoted to this recruitment. They've kind of captured the attention of Deuce, who, again, his dad played in the NFL. There's a lot of NFL presence on that Oregon coaching staff. Not to mention, this is a kid whose nickname is Deuce. Maybe wants to get away from in the Atlanta SEC area, play out of dad's shadows to a degree. And all that kind of led to an Oregon prediction. That being said, LSU has really continued to pump up the gas in this recruitment. Some of the buzz that I had heard earlier in the week that LSU was definitely running second and maybe about 40% compared to obviously Oregon at 60. From an NIL perspective, again, much like Lamar Brown, LSU does not have the best NIL offer on the table, but they are competitive. And this is a kid who was born in Baton Rouge, this is a Frank Wilson specialty of being able to say that I recruited or coached dad back in the day. Frank plays that card time and time again, and often it works more often than it doesn't. And again, doing something a little bit different. His dad didn't have the opportunity to play at LSU, being a Scotlandville kid. Deuce, after that official visit to BR, said this was my dream. I grew up wanting to do this as a BR kid. And having that opportunity, I think that's put LSU in striking distance ahead of Saturday. I would not rule them out, is what I would say. I still like where Oregon is positioned. They seem to be poised to go on a little bit of an August run, but I would not rule out the Tigers entirely just yet.
I always love a good Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld. Having said that, and you hit a good one there for LSU fans of, look, Oregon has had all this momentum, but having said that, don't rule out LSU here heading into Saturday as the Tigers continue to push and as, new recruiting staffer Lamar Brown for this 26 class tries to get in some ears as well. I know Deuce is someone who's high on his wish list to join this group again. We'll be watching. Lamar was a guy that felt like he was all A&M bound for a while there with some of the, the visits that he was making, the comments he was making, all those things. And then down the stretch kind of kept coming back to the opportunity to live this childhood dream and not wanting to pass on that, relatively once in a lifetime opportunity. You have to kind of put a qualifier on that now in the era of the transfer portal, but you wonder as they continue to try and impress upon Deuce that opportunity, does Deuce Gerald's potentially follow suit, surprise a lot of folks on the West Coast and end up in purple and gold? We shall see. A week later, next Friday, Jace Matthews, wide receiver from Mississippi that we've talked about on a couple of episodes of this show. We're now nearing his commitment date. Still looking for some clarity on him. Auburn has felt like a favorite to a lot of folks for a while. There's, some remaining quiet confidence for LSU that they're right in the thick of things. A&M in the mix with him, and then obviously home state Ole Miss trying to keep him in state lines. Jace Matthews, as we hit whatever it is, 8 or 9 days away, what's kind of your latest read on him and how closely LSU fans should be watching the potential addition of him to an already great wide receiver haul in 26?
Yeah, Auburn and LSU are the two teams that I'm starting to hear are separating themselves. Originally on previous podcasts, it's been more of Auburn, LSU, and A&M, but um, Auburn is digging in its heels here. I think maybe his best relationship is with Marco Davis, the wide receivers coach, Marcus Davis, that wide receiver coach at Auburn. They obviously he's a Mississippi guy. It's been long story that his relationship with Deuce Knight, a guy who played in his district in high school, is playing a factor. Not to mention that Auburn has not had a wide receiver commit in this class and is willing to say that you, as a blue chipper in this class, I think the top 2, 3, or 4 receiver in this class can come in and compete for playing time. I mean, these guys like Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons are one step away from the NFL. They are absolute dudes, and there's a path for Jace Matthews to be playing alongside his teammate before too long. But the team that, again, much like Deuce Gerald's, that you cannot rule out, that is continuing to run number 1 or number 2 at a lot of these marquee recruitments is LSU. I think you put it correctly. There is a quiet confidence about their chances with Jace Matthews. You talk about the connections he has with guys like Cortez Hankton and Joe Sloan. I think our colleague Shay has pointed out that Brian Kelly is playing a enlarged role in this recruitment, which not a lot of kids have the opportunity to claim that. But you can definitely, I know that it's playing a big role in Jabari Mack's recruitment, and likewise with Jace Matthews as they look to beef up this future wide receiver core. And I think the addition of a guy like Kelvin Bolden, who was one of the first to offer Jace at Ole Miss, now being in Baton Rouge, is playing a significant role in the final, week and change of this decision. So I got Auburn, by a hair, but I'm keeping my eyes on the Tigers moving into August 8th.
A lot of notable voices in the mix trying to sway this thing in favor of LSU. You mentioned, Shay shared an update over on the Bengal Tiger, and for folks that want, more consistent, up to the day, up to the hour, notes on any of these recruiting developments as it relates to LSU, certainly go over to the Bengal Tiger, check out some of the stories that all of us are posting there, as well as some of the message board updates. In addition to the Brian Kelly note that you mentioned from Shay, he said that Jace's, I don't remember if it was Jace's mom or Jace's family, had a chance to hear from Jaden Daniels' mom at some point at a recent event. And, that certainly can't hurt to kind of see the way that Jaden's college career and football career as a whole changed during his time in Baton Rouge, as well as to hear some from Tristan Keys, who remains, despite everyone wanting to say he's ending up elsewhere, he remains currently committed to LSU, and sounds like there have been some levels of conversation about the potential of, can we go be a Jamar and Justin Jefferson type 1-2 punch coming into Baton Rouge in purple and gold. And so it would be, as much as we talk about the magnitude of getting Tristan to commit when TK announced his commitment, if you potentially keep him and then add a Jace Matthews and pull both of those guys out of the SIP, what a phenomenal haul to add to your in-state duo of Jabari Mack and Kenny Darby. Jace is phenomenally talented, and I think, LSU certainly has one heck of a track record of, producing NFL level wide receivers. So there's a lot of selling points, and it sounds like an awful lot of voices making those selling points to Jace down the stretch.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to revisit this conversation, not only in August, once this class is a little bit more crystallized, but, again, in December toward the back end, making sure all of these blue chippers are still committed in line to sign. But we are looking potentially at, Brad Davis and Cortez Hankton being in the conversation as recruiter of the year for, if Tez Hankton is able to add Jace Matthews and keep Tristan Keys on board, like you mentioned, with guys like Jabari Mack, who's a top 100 guy, Kenny Darby, who Louisiana's leading receiver as a junior, has a chance, of course, to repeat that his senior season at Airline. That would be one of the best hauls in LSU wide receiver history from a recruiting standpoint. They've they've never been able to get that many guys at that position nationally, much like that. And then what Brad Davis, of course, is doing. You mentioned the impact in Mississippi, Bryson Cooley, Emmanuel Tucker, having Bryson Martinez, the stud from East Ascension, on board, and with Darius Gray, who we're going to talk about in a second. Could just be another one of those hauls that puts Brad Davis right square in that conversation as well.
The segues are super clean today, because let's talk about Darius Gray and what he could mean to that LSU offensive line haul that you just detailed there. Darius is a guy that, again, we've talked about a bunch up there in Richmond, Virginia. South Carolina has been in the thick for him. Clemson, Ohio State, Tennessee, others throughout his recruiting process, and LSU has felt like they've remained right there in that top 2 or 3 schools to watch. The anticipation was that Darius would go into his senior season still uncommitted, potentially push this thing into the season, if not all the way to December, with a signing day situation. But now he said he's getting close enough. He feels confident that he can, pray on this thing and have a decision made August 22nd and be out of the way. What is your feel on Darius now that we know there is a commitment date in place, and where the Tigers stand in that mix up top for him?
Yeah. Again, much like Darryus McKinley, if you're thinking that you're waiting till December to make your decision nowadays, you better rethink that process. It's just, the schools are not. Darius Gray is the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country. It doesn't matter who you are. They're going to recruit you to the end, but they want to know where they stand before they focus on their season, because now it's money time. Of the final 5, I think it's safe to say that Clemson and Ohio State have pretty much faded out here. This is all but a 3-team race, and I've pinned South Carolina, the longtime heavyweight, in this one. You talk about long-standing connections, that's what they have in Lonnie Teasley and Shane Beamer over there in South Carolina, close to home in Richmond, Virginia. And of course, not only from an NIL perspective, but a chance that the South Carolina is going to make some noise this year in the SEC, and Darius Gray could represent the future of that offense that's going to have Landon Duckworth and so many of these high-profile receivers that they signed in-state last year. But LSU has been the team that has continued to gain traction from the spring into the summer after the official visits, and now as this August 22nd decision nears, which might just be my baby's birth date. So who knows? Talk about 5-star fireworks. I think if a decision were made today, I would feel just about split putting it between LSU and South Carolina, but my gut and my mind don't 100% agree. But I do sort of think that LSU has the edge based off of what I've heard especially over the last month and change leading into this announcement. I would say the other facet of this is that Tennessee may be running third, but both myself and our colleague Steve Wilfong have also heard Tennessee just can't be ruled out just yet. Tennessee has missed on a couple of O-line targets, and under Glenn Ellerby, a Louisiana guy, and Josh Heupel, they very rarely miss on too many offensive line targets. And Darius Gray has been visiting Tennessee almost as long and as often as he has Columbia, South Carolina. So let's not completely rule out the Vols, who have been known for these sort of late surges in their own recruiting rights.
And I know, just looking at some of the updates from Steve on Darius in recent months, Darius has mentioned a couple of times that in addition to obviously everything that he's weighing from a football development standpoint, and obviously NIL will factor in there, he's really intrigued by the opportunity to go maybe get involved in some sports media and kind of learn that as his major. So look, if we can help with an assist to Brad Davis and Brian Kelly and company, if Darius wants to commit to and sign with LSU, he wants a show on the Louisiana vs. All Y'all channel, we can just set up the Darius Gray show, find some sponsors, make that thing happen. There's been some legends to come through those LSU manship school walls and halls. So definitely an opportunity for what he wants to major in on the academic side there in Baton Rouge as well. I'm sure Darius is a loyal listener to the Recruit Tech Boot podcast and is here with us 3 minutes in or whatever it is. And so just putting that offer out there on the table for sure.
Well, I haven't donated in some time since I haven't been accumulating wealth at the same rate that I have thought. But I would like to speak on behalf of the Merrill School of Journalism out there in College Park, Maryland. And Mike Loxley is building what I like to call a sleeping giant out there in the Mid Atlantic region, which is not too far from Richmond, Virginia. So if you want the opportunity to play big time Big Ten football in your backyard, look no further. And I would be willing to talk to the Merrill School of Journalism about a sizable internship with the Recruit That Booth podcast. Just throwing it out there.
The proximity makes a lot of sense there. It really does.
It's the best journalism school in that entire area.
They're not, the Terrapins have not been in the top 4 or 5 schools for Darryus, through some of this. So you got to wait for the next one, and the next offensive lineman can go get that Sam Spiegelman inaugural scholarship or internship or whatever it may be. Then again, we're whatever the hell it is, a week or 2 removed from me texting you or Garland or somebody about my frustrations of what are my alumni dollars at Jesuit doing, if not keeping Zyron Forstall in the mix in blue and white. And so maybe none of this is helping at all, and we should keep our meager paychecks to ourselves, because that one has not gone well for me.
All I've heard was meager, and that surmises exactly how I feel.
Talking about some in-state guys, I mean, we mentioned Darryus McKinley up top, but you've had some updates on a few other guys around the state this week. So we'll talk some about Sam Houston 2027 offensive lineman Albert Simeon, Benton 2027 quarterback Malachi Ziegler, two names that I think LSU fans have a good feel for, as well as let's start with the senior quarterback out there at St. Thomas More 2026 quarterback Cole Bergeron. You dropped an update that mentioned Virginia Tech, Colorado, and Georgia Tech as kind of 3 schools that have been at the front of his recruiting process. Certainly 3 that factored in extremely heavily for him going back to earlier this year and some of the visits this spring and this summer. I know everything going on with Coach Prime up there in Boulder kind of changed up some of his visit plans at one point this summer. Glad to hear that Dion is on the mend and back there doing what he loves in Colorado, healing up, that they've got that tumor out and he can kind of get back to work. But what's your latest with Cole? For me, I know that the Virginia Tech visit this summer was a great one, but I know that he's also been pretty intrigued by Colorado and has been eager to get back up there at some point. And so how long is this going to push before a potential Cole Bergeron commitment announcement? And what is your feel for how these 3 teams are kind of jockeying for position?
Yeah, you and I have both been digging in on this Cole Bergeron front, and definitely it depends on who you talk to. You hear Georgia Tech, you hear Virginia Tech, you hear Colorado, and I get the sense that that Virginia Tech is in a good spot, but there is a little bit of a holdup, a trepidation, if you will, because he really likes Pat Shurmur and the NFL background of Colorado's offensive coordinator, and has not had the opportunity to meet Deion Sanders and get that very unique recruiting pitch that only so many kids around the country get to feel. And obviously Deion's OC thinks that Cole Bergeron would be a great fit over there in Boulder, and likewise Brent Pry and Philip Montgomery are just 2 of the many strong relationships that Cole was able to build in Blacksburg. I think Virginia Tech is pushing the hardest. I think if he had to make a decision in before his senior season at St. Thomas More, I think that would be my prediction. However, from talking to multiple sources this week, as you know, I get the sense that it's not a lock that he will make his decision in August. And because schools like Tech and like Colorado and a few others that maybe haven't offered yet are starting to pick up the phone and reach out to this camp, if this goes into the fall, I could see him make both those official visits, get his opportunity to obviously speak to Tech and also Deion Sanders. And we'll see if, an Iowa State makes a harder push, or Georgia Tech would like to see a little bit more during his senior season. So I think I like where the Hokies are positioned if he does make a decision this summer. But I'm not sure that any of that is going to be true if this thing goes into September or beyond.
Yeah, that's my feel as well. And look, once Darryus commits on Friday, Darryus McKinley commits out there in the Lafayette area, Cole is right there among the top remaining uncommitted prospects in the state of Louisiana. The amount of guys that have already locked into their homes for the next level ahead of this upcoming senior season continues to grow quickly. And so for programs around the country that are looking for, one of those Louisiana boot boy talents, they better figure it out soon, because dancing partners are kind of running slim as more and more of the recruiting process ramps up for this 2027 class, obviously. And let's, talk about two of those guys I mentioned a couple minutes ago, starting with Malachi Ziegler. You got a feel for who some of the schools that have kind of moved their way to the forefront for the 2027 Benton quarterback have been, as he gets ready for his junior season this year and trying to build on some things there with his Tigers up there in Northwest Louisiana. What's your latest from Malachi? One of those great 2027 quarterbacks from the boot.
Yeah, much like Mr. Bergeron, Malachi may not be too far away from locking in his college decision. We talked about his classmate, Pop Houston, being a potential junior in-season commitment as well. And I think Malachi could either follow that same sort of timeline, is considering it at least, or potentially even before his junior season starts. We should know more on that, hopefully by this time next week. But now Malachi has not narrowed down his list. Obviously, he has been on a very busy spring visit tour. He made junior day visits in January and February. He visited a string of out-of-state schools in the spring and summer. He threw at SMU, at Michigan, at Notre Dame, Mississippi State. He's been to Baylor countless times. Unofficially, our intel points to schools like Mississippi State, Michigan, and SMU being at the focal point of this recruitment now, with a lot of buzz really favoring SMU, which because of OT7, because of the proximity to Benton, Malachi's been able to get to SMU a couple of times, including throwing for Rhett Lashley and Derek King over the summer. Listen, Michigan really likes him, and Jeff Levy in state loves him. But if you were to ask me to make a guess right now, I kind of am leaning in that SMU boat. And I think once Malachi determines his timeline more, we'll have a better sense of where SMU and if there's other contenders in play. But my eyes are on the Mustangs here. They have 4-star Ja'Kai Anderson out of New Orleans committed. And we'll have news on Ja'Kai in just a couple of days. Yeah. Teaser for the Recruit That Boot podcast. But I would not be surprised if they continue to hit that pipeline, especially that North Louisiana pipeline is very lucrative for them.
Yeah, I smiled as soon as you mentioned Ja'Kai. Folks will definitely want to keep up and watch kind of the latest Ja'Kai as he heads into his senior season. A one-time LSU commit who has been since the spring committed to SMU. The timeline dynamic will be really interesting for me with Malachi. The longer he pushes, I know there are several other schools, including a Clemson, that have been monitoring him and really intrigued by some of his potential. And so if he can get into this junior season and kind of show some things there in what is always a hectic and fun District 1-5A up there in the Shreveport area, does another heavy hitter kind of enter the fold for him or make a stronger push than they have to date. And kind of wrapping up today, Albert Simeon, another rising junior who has been active out there on the camp and visit circuit throughout this summer. You had a chance to catch up with him a few days ago. He's got LSU amongst a core group of SEC programs that have seemed like they're kind of taking the lead with him. Again, these guys are still a year and a half away from being able to sign, but more and more for the top prospects in the class, you see, some of this stuff getting sorted out, even on the front end of that wave of next spring and summer when things start flying really quickly for that 2027 class. How do you feel about where the Tigers are early with him, and who are kind of the biggest threats at this point for the Sam Houston offensive lineman?
Yeah, I love where LSU stands with Albert, largely because of the guy that we spoke about earlier, Brad Davis. And I had some other sources outside of Baton Rouge tell me within the last couple of weeks as I was starting to do my first initial 2027 top prospect intel on Albert, go ahead and put your pick in for LSU now with Albert. And I saw again, our colleague Shay already has the pick in. I have flirted with it, but from talking to him, I've kind of put the brakes on. It seems like schools like A&M, Florida, Oklahoma, Tennessee in particular have done a really good job with Albert. My emphasis is kind of on Tennessee and Oklahoma right now. It seems like and really A&M to that matter. Tennessee might have been his best visit of the summer, getting to work for Glenn Ellerbe. That Lance Hurd, a very talented offensive lineman who spent some time at LSU and is out of Neville, is out there. Tennessee has done a great job recruiting offensive linemen over the years, especially getting recruiting out of the boot. He got the camp for A&M and Adam Cushing. The strong emphasis on development is standing out to him at A&M. And then Oklahoma, Bill Bedenbaugh is one of the best relationships builder in the building. And obviously it's more of a faith, family, culture driven up there under Brent Venables. But of course, I'm not discounting where LSU stands. Again, multiple people will have a hard time discounting Brad Davis's role in this recruitment. I am not one to argue with that just yet, but I think he's not as much of a lean toward the Tigers at this stage as you might suspect the number one player in Louisiana in some places to be.
And the Tigers were his first offer early on his sophomore season this past September with Brad Davis, Brian Kelly and company making the move. I've been kind of itching to potentially put in a forecast for Albert Simeon to LSU for a while, but trying to be, a little bit cautious with that. We're agreeing on a lot of this stuff, but Tennessee is one. If I'm an LSU fan, worries me a little bit with some of the push that the Volunteers have been able to make early. And I think we need more controversy on this show. We agree too much, and I feel like controversy sells. So I will say something that we didn't get a chance to get to last week, the Lil Wayne album that I did have a chance to finally listen to more of. Better than I was expecting, but I don't think I like it as much as maybe you kind of hyped it to be. It was fine. I'm not mad that he put it out. I don't think I'm going to be listening to it a whole hell of a lot. Just, kind of meh, so I don't know if that kind of fuels you and gets some controversy going, but they say controversy and sex sells. And so hopefully that sells. Cause if not, I'm going to have to show a nipple or something on this show next week to kind of boost some of these numbers, pump these numbers up,
I'm contemplating ripping this shirt off.
I don't know how I just mentioned nipples and you didn't laugh.
It's a very natural word for me. It's a very natural word. Listen, I didn't overhype the album saying that this is Kendrick Lamar good. I prefaced it by saying Wayne has not produced a very good album in several years. I thought he has a couple of banger songs, I would say 4 or 5 hit pretty well that are on my playlist that I'm listening to here and there more frequently. But the entirety of the album is not on a pedestal that's he's back. This is an all-timer who just put together a couple of good songs. It's give him his props. He's making a comeback.
This is like your Michael Jordan with the Wizards era of Lil Wayne. I don't know that it's as good as Jordan with the Wizards, but you mentioned having a couple songs that really stand out for folks. For folks like me who are obviously giving it a chance late. What's a fit song or two that you think I should maybe listen to a little bit more closely, or somebody picking up the album for the first time should queue up and let that be their introduction and their kind of litmus test to whether they're going to like this or not.
I appreciate this. This is why we get along so well.
I know you've been on me for I don't know how many months, and then when I finally did get a chance to listen to the bulk of the album a week and a half ago, we didn't even get a chance to talk about it.
I know. For context, only 5 songs made my like daily mix. So like we're not talking about this is, if you want to see the Kendrick here, it's pretty overbearing. I like Welcome to the Carter. I like hip hop. I like Cotton Candy, and I like Being Myself. Those are I guess I also can't count. So those are the 4 that I really liked. I think I like more. I just didn't make the top mix, but I would start there, and I think he's got a couple. They hit hard.
There you go. That's the recommendations for the first edition of what can be a new segment, the Sam's Jam playlist suggestions on Recruit That Boot. He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jet Roser. We covered an awful lot of ground, a lot to look forward to in August for folks that haven't listened to the Carter 6, some musical ground that you can go cover in August as well. Again, thanks as always for tuning in. This is Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot.